Hey everybody, welcome to the Autoimmune Connection, a monthly YouTube hangout that brings people together to connect the dots between diet, lifestyle, and autoimmune disease. I'm your host, Christina Findell from McLeanPlate.com, and tonight I have three totally awesome autoimmune paleo bloggers here tonight. I'm so excited to meet these guys. I've been following them for a while, and they're really nice and really fun, and I'm really excited. So thank you guys so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would you guys like to take a minute to kind of tell people who you are and what you do and why you do it? Mika, you want to start?
Sure. Yeah. I'm Michaela, and I am an English teacher. I've been an English teacher in Spain and Brazil and now Mexico for the past 5 years. And in 2011, I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. I think it's interesting. A lot of people say that their diagnosis comes as a relief because they were wondering what all these symptoms were, and they think that finally finding a name can kind of be a solution. And for me, it was kind of the opposite because I was hoping I just had some kind of infection and I was going to get better. And when they told me that I wasn't, and actually what they told me was I never would get better and I would always have to take medication, it was really actually just more like a punch in the head. But I've discovered that that wasn't really a life sentence, and through the autoimmune protocol I've been able to recover my health, and now I work a lot less because that was one of the things I had to change for my health, and I have 2 blogs. I blog at slightlylerflostgirl.com, which is where I talk about my personal experience with Crohn's disease and the autoimmune protocol. And then I also have another blog, which is La Chica Paleo, which is a blog in Spanish about the autoimmune protocol. And it's actually had really great response. It's the first blog out there sharing this information. I feel like with autoimmune disease, we often feel kind of like we're stuck. And the autoimmune protocol is like an exit. It's like a solution that we can do something for ourselves. So people are really excited about that, not just in English.
That's really
nice
awesome
to meet everyone.
It's awesome to have you. All of that's really exciting. I love that you have a Spanish language blog. And I love that you're an English teacher that has been all these places, because that was my dream job, and then I got sick, and I just hadn't had the guts to pursue it anymore after that. So kudos, man.
You can do it.
Erin, you want to talk about who you are and what you do?
Sure. My name's Erin, and I blog over at enjoyingthisjourney.com. And gosh, what do I do when I'm not blogging? I take care of 2 kids. I am a wife, and we recently moved to a different part of our state, so we're kind of adjusting to that still. I have psoriasis. I got diagnosed with that when I was 12, but I've had it since I was 5. And I have psoriatic arthritis, which I was recently diagnosed with, but I think I've had it for at least 10 years. I was one of the people that would joke when she was like in her 20s that she had her grandmother's arthritic hands and knees, which is not so funny anymore. And I also have Raynaud, which I just learned how to pronounce that recently. So it's French, and I didn't know. I used to say Raynaud disease, which is incorrect. I didn't know that. So those are the 3 that I have, and it's been kind of a fun journey figuring out what works for me and what doesn't. But I enjoy sharing it on my blog, especially because it's a little bit of, the daily stuff that I do, and food, obviously, and kind of, bits of my family is on the blog too. So it's kind of like a mixed bag. But it's my little platform, my little place to, have my sounding board and everything like that. So it's been a fun experience so far.
That's awesome. I think everybody kind of needs one of those in their lives. So
yeah.
Yeah, awesome. And your kids are adorable, by the way. Everybody needs to follow her on Instagram because she has the most adorable kids ever.
Yeah. Very much. I think they're pretty cute. I'll keep them. So.
Rory, how about you?
Hi, yeah, it's lovely to meet everybody. So I'm Rory from the paleopi.com. I've been on paleo since maybe 2013 now, and I found it through the amazing Terry Walls. So hopefully most people who are watching this know who Terry Walls is. She reversed her multiple sclerosis using diet and lifestyle, and she's been the inspiration for me to get going with this kind of lifestyle and diet. So I'm based out of Australia, Canberra, Australia, but really enjoy connecting with you guys in the States. So much great information and knowledge coming out of there, and we're really starting to see the paleo movement take hold here as well. Mark Sisson will be here next year, for example, and we've got a few of our own local celebrities, including a celebrity from the #1 food TV show doing paleo now. So it's taking off.
Awesome.
So as I said, been on paleo since 2013, and have been blogging since earlier this year. And since I've been blogging, I've been on autoimmune paleo, and that's been the first way that my kind of symptoms have stopped. I don't have an autoimmune disease which is diagnosed, which was really difficult at the start because you just want answers, right? You want these answers, but the doctors couldn't give me answers. And in fact, I'd go and see my local general practitioner. She'd get tests done, and she'd always come back and say that, no, you're healthy, everything's fine, your blood markers are great, you see reactive proteins low, there's nothing kind of wrong with you. And, you start to question, am I a hypochondriac, or like, is this really happening? But I've always been someone that's been very healthy. And I never went to the doctor very much. So I knew that, there was something more to it. So the symptoms that I've got, that I had, I guess, at the time, I was getting really bad brain fog to the point where I'd be dizzy and really lethargic. I'd get really bad anxiety. I'd also get really bad dry eye and symptoms of rosacea, so like a flushing face, skin, that kind of thing. And yeah, by going autoimmune paleo, that stopped all of that.
That's awesome. I mean, having a diagnosis, and it did for me. It was the answer that I've been looking for. It was my starting place. So it is. I remember not having a diagnosis for most of my life and being, am I a hypochondriac? Am I crazy? What the heck is wrong with me? So as much as getting a diagnosis was a punch in the face, where it's like, oh my gosh, I really am sick, and I'm going to be sick for the rest of my life, it really did kind of, well, okay, at least I'm not crazy anymore. So,
totally.
Yeah. So,
not having a diagnosis was definitely tough, but at the moment I'm really okay with that. Still not having a diagnosis, like being able to track my own symptoms and my triggers. I know what will make me better and what makes me worse. Even if I don't have that, for people out there that don't have a diagnosis, there are definitely ways you can still manage whatever you're going through.
That's awesome. That's great. And I really love your blog title. I mean, duh, it's perfect. Like, that's exactly what we do. We are our own private investigators, and it's perfect, and I love it, and I'm jealous that I didn't think of it. But so, Erin, what were when you kind of started your whole autoimmune journey? You mentioned you were like 5 or something when your symptoms kind of started.
Yeah.
What was that like? What were your symptoms like? And
well, it was a fun day. I remember it really well. It was kind of like one of the stories. I was 5 and I was watching a movie with my family, and I had this crazy itch behind my ear, and I couldn't stop scratching. I ended up scratching until it was raw and bleeding, and we went to countless doctors to try to figure out what in the world was going on, because I had this red, scaly skin all over my scalp at the time, and no one could tell us what it was. It was pretty ridiculous. It wasn't until I was 12 that a doctor finally put a name on it, and it was psoriasis. And then, throughout, my teenage years even, I had it eventually all over my torso and my legs. It was pretty fun. And then I did some unfortunate, sun tanning as a teenager, and then the stuff on my legs and my torso cleared up, thankfully. But I've still, I suppose part of the thing is, the hormonal stuff that, being a mother and all those fun changes with your hormones has definitely played a part too. Because I remember after I had my daughter, I had a nice sized flare of psoriasis, and after I had my son, I had another flare, and things like that, to the point where it was actually on my face and not the areas that you can really hide it well. And so that's when I started looking into changing my diet. I actually started out doing primal, so that's kind of like a paleo-minded diet with the addition of dairy. But I had to change that because my son was reacting to the dairy when we were nursing. And so then I went to paleo, but then soon after that I found out about the autoimmune protocol. And so I just kind of dove in feet first. That's kind of how I do things. I just go for it. So those were the symptoms for the psoriasis, at least, just the the red, scaly skin. And then for the psoriatic arthritis, that was a bit more of an underlying thing that had been going on for years, but I just didn't have. I was in my 20s. I didn't think of anything, much. I didn't think much of it, and so I didn't go and seek out anything, with a doctor or anything, until after I had my son, I started noticing it was getting worse. So my joint pain and everything was pretty bad, to the point where I couldn't open cans and little things like and I call them the stupid little buttons on kids' clothes. I have problems with those. So things like that, I started noticing it was becoming an issue. I couldn't button my kids' coats. I couldn't do things like that. So I finally went to a rheumatologist to just rule out anything else, and he basically told me that I had psoriatic arthritis. Even though it's on the lower tier, it was still pretty obvious just by the little consultation that he did with me in the exam, that I do have that. So I'm hoping at least with that I can keep that on the lower tier and not have it escalate or get worse when I get older, because that would be fun if I could just minimize the issues that I have. That would be nice. So yeah.
I think we're all on the same page with you there. Let's make our sickest days be the ones that are behind us.
Yeah.
And then Raynaud's too, or sorry, did I say that right?
Raynaud's. No, Raynaud's. My French teacher would probably just lay into me, but yes, it's a Raynaud's disease apparently. And that I didn't know anything about that. I have experienced that. My husband used to make so much fun of me because he'd look down at my toes when it was cold and he'd say, "Babe, your toes are like purple. What's going on?" And I would just joke and say, "Oh, I'm just cold," or give him a massage and get that blood flowing. I had no idea. And in my rheumatologist's office, it was crazy cold. And he was doing his little exam and looking at my feet and everything, and he said, "Oh," and then he diagnosed me with that too. So that was like a twofer. It was a twofer. But that I've noticed since, because we recently moved, not recently, but we moved this summer to a place that has winter that is like a normal winter. It's already snowed outside. But I've noticed that I am able to actually walk around our home without, shoes or socks on, and I can have my toes looking normal and not purple. So that's kind of a fun thing, that my husband can't make fun of my toes anymore. So that's a plus. But I know some people get it in their hands, where their hands will change color too. I don't have that. It's only in my feet, my toes. So, yeah.
Thank you. That's is one of those things though. Like, the first doctor I ever went to was a rheumatologist, and she kind of set me on the path of autoimmune disease, but she wasn't very helpful about it. And so, I mean, they say that rheumatoid diseases, I guess, are the easiest autoimmune diseases to diagnose. So
yeah. Well, he basically, what he was doing was ruling out rheumatoid arthritis, is what he was telling me. And he said that for psoriatic arthritis, it's very asymmetrical. So when I started having, a flare on my right hand, my left foot was also flaring. So it's kind of a strange thing, but just through his diagnosing and his x-rays and everything, he was able to just, nail it, because he said that everything that I was talking about just was screaming psoriatic arthritis. So it was, and then he was like, maybe you should try turmeric. I was like, I got that. I do turmeric quite often, and he was saying, that he has some patients that do really well with anti-inflammatory diets, and he even did the little, bunny ears for it. And I said, yeah, I'm doing that too. So, and I gave him some resources. I was like, maybe you should look into these things, trying to teach him. So it was kind of funny.
Yeah. So, Michaela, what about your experience and your symptoms, getting diagnosed and all of that? Is Michaela still here? I see her.
We lose her.
We may have lost Michaela. Let's skip Michaela for now, and come back. So Rory, you mentioned that you had kind of a weird collection of just random stuff. So was it just, how did you get into, at what point, I guess, did you start thinking, oh, I need to do something about this, and I need to, maybe my diet will help, or what was your...
Yeah, that's a really good question, and that's exactly the way that I think about it. So as I was saying earlier, growing up I was always really healthy, hardly ever had any colds, would bounce back from any cold flus really easily. Hardly ever went to the doctor, and then at the age of 18 I got what's called here as glandular fever. I think it might be mononucleosis is the actual virus itself. And so it's quite a common virus or thing to get, but most people usually get it when they're younger, and you get it from it's called the kissing disease here. I don't know if you guys have that over here. Yep. So maybe it was the kissing, I don't know, or the drink sharing, but whatever you do during high school caused me to get, and it really hit me hard. I was, for maybe a couple of months, I would come home from school. I was 17, 18 at the time, and I'd just sleep until the next morning. So I'd get home at 4:30, and I would sleep until 7 a.m. the next morning, and then do it all over again. And at the time, then some symptoms started to appear and then progress. So the first thing that I noticed was that my cheeks would flush really easily, which had never happened to me before. And, I kind of just put it down to, I didn't even really think about it, to be honest, and just kept going. And then, the facial flushing got worse, especially when I was drinking. So I was then looking into links between alcohol and facial flushing, and people who have rosacea out there will know that alcohol is a common trigger for rosacea, which causes facial flushing amongst other symptoms. So I was like, okay, I've got rosacea, but facial flushing is the worst thing. I can kind of continue on with my life. I then finished my university degree here in Australia and moved over to Canada. And during my time in Canada, that's when my symptoms really started to progress. So living in Montreal, I think that my lifestyle wasn't as good as what it could be. I love the city, I love Canadians, and can't wait to get back there, guys. Don't hold this against me. But growing up in Australia, we always had quite a lot of sunlight, especially from where I'm at, and very warm days, easy to get outside. And in Montreal, I was just spending my time inside, kind of avoiding the winter. It was always very dark, so I wasn't used to this at all. I was sleeping again the really long hours, like when I got mononucleosis for the first time. I started getting anxiety, which I'd never had for the first time in my life. And yeah, I was thinking, this this kind of isn't normal, it's not right, but I kind of kept going. I was a poor, recently graduated student at the time and didn't have the money or didn't want to invest the time into, fixing my health. I just wanted to go out and party. And so anyway, it continued, and then I started to get this really dry eye, so much so that I'd have to put in, like eye drops every kind of 10 minutes or so to alleviate the dryness. And it was at that stage when I had all of those symptoms together, I was like, no, this isn't right. I need to focus on my health. So I bought a plane ticket back home, and I got on the next plane back to Canberra, and then started to look into what was going on. And so at the start of my journey, it was extraordinarily optimistic. I'd said that I'd go down to a doctor, be a pill, and I'll take it, and everything will be okay. And I think that maybe a lot of people out there who haven't heard of using diet or lifestyle as medicine might think that it's a way to cure problems, but I found out that there was no pill to just alleviate all those symptoms, sadly. So as I said, I went to the doctor. The doctor told me that everything was fine. I knew it wasn't fine. So I kept looking into things. Went to a naturopath, what we call a naturopath here. Do you have naturopaths over in the States? Yep. Okay. We speak the same language, but sometimes it's like I'm speaking a completely different language.
Yeah, sometimes.
So I went to a naturopath, and she was great. She kind of opened my mind to using, food as medicine, as our old mate Hippocrates once said. And yeah, I started to kind of tinker with my diet, take out some of the processed foods, but still, my symptoms were getting worse at that stage. And that's when I found kind of Terry Walls, and she was a bit of a savior. I felt really kind of lost. I felt like I'd been trying a lot of things, been at this for maybe a year, and still wasn't able to do anything. And then seeing her move from a tilt recline wheelchair to riding horses, and I think now she's jogging around her neighborhood. How can you not be inspired by that? So I remember showing my family that TEDx talk, and just being so excited about it. And I looked right into this paleo thing, bought Rob Wolf's book, read that within a week, and I was hooked. Changed my diet and lifestyle completely. And the fridge, it just didn't ever look the same. No more dairy. It was a tough transition, I must say. No more dairy. I really enjoyed my morning chocolate milks, but no more. And yeah, the fridge just got rid of the processed foods altogether, and started eating whole foods. And lo and behold, my symptoms stopped. Stopped progressing, I should say. They didn't get any worse, but they were still there, which was a big milestone for me, because that was the first time that had ever happened. But it wasn't enough to reverse them. And so I kept looking into it, and then I saw the autoimmune through Sarah Ballantyne's website, the Paleo Mum. And then once I found that website, it's such a bastion of great knowledge, and decided to give this autoimmune thing a crack. And sure enough, some of my symptoms started to regress. Like my facial flushing was no longer an issue. I used to get keratosis pilaris on the back of my arms and my legs. That started to fade. And so was following that for a couple of months, and yeah, things were going great, but still, I'm not a perfectionist, but I'm very determined, and I know how I want things. And so I was like, it's still not feeling quite right. What's happening here? And that's when I launched my blog, the Paleo PI. And as you said, Christine, at the start, that it's all about, this blog is finding the root cause of chronic illness, and then addressing that root cause through diet and lifestyle, and also beliefs, which I want to touch on in a second, which has been a really big a turning point for me. So about maybe 3 or 4 months into the Paleo PI, I came across this great guy out in Canada who kind of just helped me to reimagine the way that rethink the way I was thinking, and the belief system that I had. So there's this science called epigenetics. Have you guys heard of epigenetics?
Yeah, there's a lot out there in the field.
Yeah.
Everyone nods.
So yeah, as you know, it's all about DNA, certain DNA getting switched on and off because of lifestyle and dietary factors, and that can then influence your health in a positive or an adverse way, depending on those factors. And then there's this new branch of science coming out of epigenetics called behavioral epigenetics, and it's about how your thoughts, beliefs, and perceptions influence your DNA and then can cause it to express either positively or negatively. And to me, that was just mind-blowing. Like, wow, like, you know, I can't believe that our thoughts can control how our bodies are, well, the health of our bodies, but I guess it kind of makes sense now looking back on it. So then I started to look into this kind of behavioral epigenetics and what I could do to change certain beliefs and just really look at my beliefs in the first place. And you know, I was holding a lot of what I call self-limiting beliefs. You know, I can't do this, I can't do that, I'm too sick, I'm too tired, or, you know, I'm not a very good speaker, so I can't do public speaking, or whatever it was, you know. So I started to kind of work on changing these belief systems, and for the first time ever since having dry eyes, that started to get better, and I was gobsmacked, as we say in Australia. Flabbergasted, I guess, is kind of the word to use. And yeah, so now I'm maybe, what, a year and a half into the autoimmune protocol, and I'm feeling better than probably I ever have. Thoughts that are running through my head on a daily basis are really negative. I don't feel like my health impacts me from doing things that I want to do. And yeah, looking forward to continuing to get healthier and lead an awesome lifestyle.
That's awesome. It really is. I studied psychology in college, and the only thing I really took away from studying psychology was how crazy it is that our thought patterns on, you know, if they're consistently negative, they bring everything down. Our hormones, our immune system, our digestion, everything just completely suffers. And it really, I think, a mental overhaul is as much an important part of healing as a dietary or lifestyle overhaul. It's really cool stuff. Michaela, we missed you earlier. You're back now. So let's talk about your...
I hope so.
Hopefully. Let's talk about your journey.
Yeah.
Your symptoms, what getting diagnosed was like for you, and how you got into paleo. Yeah.
All right. So I don't know exactly where you lost me before, but I'll start out by saying that I did get diagnosed quite quickly, and then after I was diagnosed, I got much sicker. So basically, they were throwing all of the medications in the book at me, and they weren't working. And I was in the hospital in the United States at this point, and I told my mom, I can't do this anymore. I would rather be dead than be this sick. And it was really horrible. And they ended up trying biological medications, and they worked long enough to get me out of the hospital into Brazil, against everyone's advice, where I proceeded to get sick again and try more medications with not very good results. But I was surviving. I was working. I was making the motions, but I was constantly running to the bathroom, leaving a classroom of 40 teenagers, running to the bathroom and being like, if someone's there, I'm not going to make it. And eventually, I realized that there had to be another way. I searched all over Google, and I actually found Danielle Walker of Against All Grains, her story, and was like, oh, this paleo thing sounds great, so I'm going to try it. And quite quickly, I realized that wasn't going to be enough, and probably by, I think it was April 2012, I found the Paleo Moms website and decided, well, I'm going to try this. And after a couple weeks of feeling a little bit better, I all of a sudden got way, way worse, which in Brazil, food is really important, so people thought I was crazy because I was eating these weird foods, and my mother-in-law was like, "You're getting skinnier, you're going to die, this is terrible," and I was. And it turned out after 6 months of this, of me getting worse and almost giving up on the food idea, I had an infection of C. difficile. I don't know how to say it in English. C. difficile, Clostridium difficile, whatever that is. It's basically a,
I think.
let's just say C. diff.
Yeah.
And that was making everything way worse. And once that was treated, I began to see the results of the autoimmune protocol, and I started getting better. But it was very slow. Oftentimes, I just felt like it wasn't worth all the effort I was putting into it, and I just wanted to eat some salsa. And what I actually had to do was quit my job before I could start getting healthier, because I realized that while the food is powerful, our lifestyle choices are maybe even more so. And I was working like 60 hours a week. I had 500 students. I loved my job, but it was just not compatible with my disease. So after I quit my job and started sleeping lots of hours, it took me like a month to catch up on my sleep, I started getting better. And at this point, I still have like digestive upset sometimes. I'm still working out the kinks, but after a year and a half on the autoimmune protocol, I can say that I am at least 85% better.
That's awesome. 85% is awesome. So are all of you still are all of you still on the AIP, or have you made further modifications? Have you added foods back in? What do your diets look like right now? Go ahead.
Sure. I have been able to eat some grass-fed butter. This is very recent. The regular butter gave me zit, but the grass-fed butter seems to be okay. And I've also been eating some pastured eggs. Conventional eggs were a total fail, and these other eggs are good. But anytime I eat anything that's from the nightshade world, I get terrible joint pain, which is actually a Crohn's disease symptom. So it's it was one of my symptoms that I didn't mention. There were a lot of them. But yeah, I'm making progress. I'm mostly full AIP, but occasionally those eggs with butter are a nice treat.
Yeah, that's awesome. The first things I added back in were eggs and grass-fed dairy, because they are very nutritious if you tolerate them well, and it's nice to have those occasionally. How about you, Erin?
Oh, God. Okay, so I still pretty much do AIP. Along the way, I've had lots of little mishaps and missteps and, you know, eaten things I probably shouldn't have eaten. Like, I've fallen into that gluten-free trap a few times where you're like, oh, but it's grain-free, and or not grain-free, but gluten-free, and I can have this. You can't. Don't do what I did. But then this last summer, I actually had an IgG test done and found there were quite a few foods that I was eating that were AIP that my body was reacting to. So I cut out those foods as well. So right now I'm AIP plus. Like, I have some more things that I'm not eating, which is frustrating and can be really challenging in the kitchen. But I feel like if I can do this, you know, for a little bit longer, and if it's going to help me in the long run, I'm all for it. Like coconut. Oh, good Lord. I miss coconut. But it was really, really high on my IgG. So my body was fighting it tooth and nail, and I just had to let go of it. So I do better without it, and that's what I have to keep reminding myself. But yeah, for the most part, I'm still AIP. I've tried to reintroduce coffee, and I've tried to reintroduce chocolate, and those don't work so well. And I tried eggs, and I've tried nuts, and nuts is actually what made me seek the rheumatologist in the first place, because I tried to reintroduce them, and that's when my toes were crazy inflamed from the psoriatic arthritis. So nuts for me are just completely off the table until who knows when. But you know, it's been a huge learning process, and I've had a lot, like I said, I've had a lot of missteps along the way, but right now I'm pretty solid with what I'm doing, and I'm comfortable with it. And then when I feel like I'm able to maybe start reintroducing things, I'll try it again, but I'm going to do it the right way. Because the other thing that I did when I tried to, you know, initially do reintroductions, I went to those things that I really missed the most, like coffee and chocolate, instead of doing the baby steps, which I know is a huge thing with the reintroductions. So when I am ready to start them again, I will do it the right way. So, yeah.
In there. And it is when you have to restrict more than the AIP, it's kind of like, oh, seriously? Like, more? You got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it's like, you know, that's how I felt going into the AIP in the first place. It's like, you got to be kidding me. I'm giving up all these foods?
Yeah.
And then the second time around, I had to give up everything that had yeast in it, which included, like, leftovers and fruit. And it was kind of like, I've done it before. I've given up foods that I thought I loved and needed before. I can do it again. And that's it's been a year now. I haven't had anything fermented, nothing leftover, nothing old, nothing that might have any yeast growth on it at all. And it's I'm okay, you know. It's different, but I'm fine. And hopefully it's not forever. But if you know, it'll end when it ends.
Yes.
So, how about you, Rory? What's your diet like these days?
So maybe if I scroll back to a couple of weeks ago, it was at its like apex for maybe 2 years. So maybe a couple of weeks ago, I went and took up an opportunity with my 9-to-5 job where I was working for 2 weeks, traveling and working between 16 and 20-hour days. And as Mika said, it's not all about food. It's definitely about lifestyle as well. So before I went traveling for work, I reintroduced grass-fed dairy into my diet. I'd reintroduced eggs, and I'd reintroduced activated soaked nuts into my diet, and all didn't pose a problem. I felt on top of the world. I was like, I can do anything, you know, this is awesome. One thing after another. And so, yeah, I took up the opportunity with work thinking, you know, I've got this health thing covered, went off and came back, and I could not tolerate anything but strict AIP, and I was even having issues with some FODMAP foods. So it just completely, that 2 weeks really unraveled a lot of things for me, and also gave me a good life lesson about managing stress and sleep, which I should hopefully already know.
Yeah, sometimes you need a reminder. I mean, I know that the invincible feeling. It's hard to argue with when you get it. Totally.
And for me, I should mention as well, because a few people have come to my blog and for an issue that I have with sulfur intolerance, foods that are high in sulfur. So as with you, Erin, and Christina, I have issues outside of the AIP. I can't eat every kind of AIP food. So things like kale, broccoli, cauliflower, onions, garlic. I have a lot of problems with that. It causes like a flare-up in my eyes, sometimes my skin. And it turns out, going back to my DNA, I have a polymorphism in a gene causing too much sulfites to accumulate into my bloodstream. And sulfites can be quite damaging, so working on getting that enzyme back to where it should be. But yeah, in the meantime, I can only eat very little of those foods.
Interesting. That's really handy information, though. I mean, not like you know that that's happening with your DNA and stuff. I feel like that makes the solution that much more like, okay, now that I know for sure, maybe easier to stick with, or I don't know, you're more
definitely. Yeah, I mean, 23andMe was great. That's where I went and got those tests. So I definitely recommend it for anybody that is still having health issues after going diet and lifestyle. I mean, there's so many rabbit holes you can go down with DNA, so you just got to be kind of careful with that and maybe work with an experienced practitioner. I definitely did. But once you kind of get to the root of it, as you say, Christina, it's definitely easier to adhere to and pinpoint exactly what's happening.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think that's.
I would like to add something to that.
Yeah, go for
it. I have not been able to really consult with anybody because I've been living abroad for most of my whole AIP experience. And I do think that it can be really helpful to have someone help you troubleshoot, because when I was first starting with AIP and I was not getting better, I was like, okay, well, low FODMAP, or what about SIBO, or what about this or that? And the more you read, the more you kind of can go down these rabbit holes. And even just DNA testing can do the same thing to you. So having someone who knows more than just what we know from searching on the internet, which can be a lot, but having someone who's experienced with it help you, I think can make a big difference. And I kind of think I would have gotten better faster if I'd had that help. So.
Absolutely. That's it's a sad fact that most of, at least my experience here in America, was that most of the doctors were not able to help me at all. And
Yeah.
And it really did. Finding one that actually, like, she recommended paleo right off the bat before I even opened my mouth, like, finding her made a huge difference just in my mental well-being, like, knowing that I was in good hands. Like, I haven't even seen her that many times. I haven't really needed her help, but knowing that she's there has made a huge difference. So I really, it's hard. It's hard to find that, and I sympathize with people who are struggling to find that, because for me it was a complete accident. And
Could I add something to that as well?
Was that Roy? Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Living in Australia as well, obviously, as I was saying before, it feels like we're on the other side of the world sometimes. And here I did have problems finding practitioners. There are some really good ones, but no one that was kind of versed in this sulfur CBS polymorphism. And so what I ended up doing was, through distance or Skype, I found a practitioner in Canada. In fact, and I worked with him for a couple of months and really got to the bottom of it. So if you are having problems wherever you are, you might be really remote and might think that, you know, there aren't any many doctors in your area, but you can definitely work remotely or via Skype. And I've got a post on my site about that too, about strategies for working with healthcare practitioners via distance.
That's a really awesome post. It's probably one of my favorite all-time posts, because that's really helpful, practical information for people to have who, you know, if they need help, they need to know how to find it and what to look for. And that's a really great post to direct them to. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
We've talked a little bit about, like, mental, you know, taking a step back from work or getting enough sleep and all of that stuff. Are there any other, like, lifestyle strategies that you guys really pay attention to that help you a lot?
Well, that's stress.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Stress is a huge thing. At least for me, like, I know that sleep and stress, like you guys have been talking about, is, for me at least, plays more of a role in how I'm feeling, more so than diet. Way more. So if I'm not getting sleep, I'm not going to feel 100%. Especially in my situation, you know, with 2 little kids, and, you know, my son is still trying to, you know, we're reading, and he's finally getting out of our bed at night, and then he climbs back in, and I'm waking up, you know, throughout the night, and just not having that good solid, you know, I'd be happy with, you know, 7 hours straight of sleep, and I am lucky if I get 4 hours interrupted and then another, you know, couple hours. But just having that solid sleep is super important, but then also managing and dealing with your stress, that's another thing that I need to work on, and I'm very aware of it. And I'm open to, you know, suggestions on how to do it aside from what I know, and that's, you know, like meditation and yoga and things like that. For me, it's a matter of actually carving out that time with, you know, doing all the other things that I have to do during the day with my kids, and actually just making it happen and making that a priority and doing it. You know, that's what I struggle with.
Yeah, me too. It's hard to find, you know, the energy or the time or whatever to take you time when you feel like you have other people that need you time.
Yes.
And stress is just one of those things. It's so individual. Everybody responds differently. Everybody has different strategies, and what works for one person may not be the best strategy. Like for me, yoga, I love the way it makes me feel after I'm done, but I hate doing it. So it's really not a great stress reliever for me, because that whole hour I'm doing yoga, I'm just so mad at myself for having to do yoga. So, you know, and if it works, that's awesome. But for me,
Well,
I need something else. So it's
like I'll be doing yoga, and then I'll have my son climbing on my back, and then I'll have my daughter trying to mimic. You know, it's not quite like a Zen setting. You know, when I'm doing it at home, it's not quite the best thing.
Exactly. So yeah, it's a huge one, and I mean, for me, that's my big trigger. Is every time I fall off the wagon or have a huge flare, it's because of stress, and
Absolutely.
I haven't figured out what to do about it either. That's it.
Since you mentioned yoga, I will say another one that's been big for me that's actually exercise. And it's not doing more exercise that I've had to do. I've had to stop. Not 100%, but I've actually written about this a couple times. The Paleo Mom just wrote about it recently, maybe a couple months ago, about the effect of exercise on our gut. And the gut is important to everyone, not just people with Crohn's disease, because it's a big thing. And I was a long-distance runner since I was probably 12, and I love running. And it turns out that running makes me sick. And I actually discovered that the hard way when after I finishing a 10-mile race, I had been in remission and I started another flare. So finding a way to exercise without going too hard, which I love, has been really important. And I've really had to step back on that one for my health. So it's hard. I know you runners out there think that you can't stop running, and if you do, the world will end. But health is actually more important, unfortunately.
Yeah. At Paleo FX last year, you know, we'd go up and listen to all these people talk and stuff, and then afterwards they do Q&As. And I would say, like, the most common Q would be some woman asking about, you know, I'm really healthy, I eat well, I exercise, and I'm having all these problems. And then the answer would always be, are you a runner? Stop running. Every time, without fail, they were a runner, and they were doing long distance, and it was just, you know, we're not really built for that. And unfortunately, I mean, I used to run. My dad runs marathons and stuff, and it's fun. I like it. But yeah, I haven't. It's hard. How about you, Rory?
Well, yeah, it's all about stress management for me as well, and how I manage my stress best is getting out in nature. Absolutely love it. So over the weekend is an example of an activity that I sometimes do, and went out camping, and it was just completely relaxing. At the end of the trip, even though we'd kayaked for maybe 8 hours over 2 days, I got out and I said to my partner, it feels like I've just been on like a day spa treatment. My muscles were completely relaxed. I felt great. Was really looking forward to the start of the working week. It's Monday already, so yeah, it was really good. And so I try to get out into the sun about half an hour each day, and making sure that when I'm out in the sun, it's in a setting that has a bit of grass and some trees. I go barefoot, making sure that I'm getting some contact with the earth, and I always feel really, really good afterwards.
Sounds awesome to me. That's one thing I think Americans, maybe other people too, are just really guilty of never getting out of the house ever. And it's easy to take that for granted. It's easy to think like, oh, getting a little bit of sun, that really can't make that big of a difference. But then when it rains for like a week on end and it's gloomy and dark, and like I get so depressed, and I'm like, duh, like need to go outside and get some sunlight and take advantage of it when it's here. It really does make a huge difference. So that's a good one too. Getting sunlight, exercise, stress management, sleep. I think we've hit on all the big ones. So that's awesome. And it's getting about closing time. Before we wrap things up, do any of you have any final thoughts, any advice for listeners, anything else you'd like to add about what your hopes are for the future or what your journey has been like?
Me. My advice would be, don't give up, guys. Sometimes it feels like it's not working, your diet's not working, you can't make the changes you need to make, you're not able to sleep enough, and blah, blah, blah. But this is what we have. This is our power, is making these changes. And it may take a long time. It may feel like sometimes you go backwards. It may seem like it's not working, but it works. You just have to find your way. So that would be That would be my thing to say. Don't give up. I wanted to, and I'm really glad I didn't. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
How about you, Rory?
Yeah, so what I wanted to say, and something on a lifestyle kind of hack before that I maybe didn't mention, was about socializing and the importance of getting out and seeing your friends, seeing your family. When I first got ill and moved back to Australia, I decided, like, I couldn't live my life as I was living before. You know, I wasn't drinking the alcohol, going out partying till 8 hours. And all my friends at the time were doing that, and so what I decided to do was just remove myself, and I thought from social situations, and I thought I'll get back to it once, you know, I'm feeling better, everything will be normal again. And it took 6 months, maybe even more, to realize that that was not a good thing for my health. Like I was just saying, Christina, sitting in bed or sitting at home and not getting outside, not seeing people, you just don't feel good. And it impacts your health adversely as a result. So if I could give any advice to anyone that is maybe starting out on this or a little exasperated, is that just continue to see people, continue to talk to people about this. And one of the big concerns I had was losing friends, and it hasn't happened at all. In fact, what's happened from this whole experience is that I've gained so many more new friends, and my circle of friends has enlarged exponentially, and I've started thinking about new things. I'm surrounding myself with people that think about the same things, and it's been really uplifting. So that would be my advice.
That's really good advice. I think that's something we all are guilty of when we get sick and realize, oh, we can't go out and drink, we can't stay up late, we can't whatever. We don't hang out with people anymore. And yeah, that's something it took me like several years to stop being a homebody, and it made a huge difference. It's awesome. Good advice.
The other thing is you might lose friends, actually. And you have to know that the friends that you lose are the ones that you needed to lose anyway, and the ones that you gain will fill your life even more. So I do think that sometimes you will feel like you're losing friends, and the ones that really matter will stick around, and you'll find some other great people too through your health, looking for health.
Absolutely.
That's a really good point. Yep.
How about you, Erin? Final thought?
I would think that the first thing, like if I had someone to tell me what I know now, back when I was starting, is number one, you're worth it. Number two, it'll be okay. You need, what helped me is I needed to eventually focus on the things that, not what I couldn't eat, but what I could, and kind of take it as a challenge and look at it as a way that it's going to challenge me in the kitchen, because I love to cook. So, you know, working with foods I've never worked with before, like I've never worked with yucca root before. I wouldn't even know what that was if it hit me in the head until I started doing this. You know, making your own bone broth, it might seem so strange, but it's such a comforting thing to have a cup of bone broth sitting next to you when you're, you know, doing a Google Hangout, or, you know, starting the day off with a cup of bone broth. Things like that. It'll, you know, it can all seem very overwhelming at first, and it is. I've been there. But it's all worth it, especially if it has you feeling better. You taking the reins and taking control over your health is, like, hands down the best thing that you can do. Surrounding yourself with people that support you and ignoring the naysayers, as hard as it can be, is probably your best bet. And just have fun with it, really. Try to look at the positive instead of, you know, focusing on all the negativity, like I can't eat this and I can't eat this, but, you know, focus on the good stuff.
Absolutely. Awesome advice, you guys. I am so sorry that we have to hang up and leave. It's been an hour. It was so nice to meet all of you guys. You are totally awesome, really fun, just beautiful people, and I'm so glad that we got together and did this. I could talk to you all night. And I want to thank everybody that watched us live for tuning in. And I want to remind everybody that they can follow A Clean Plate on Google+, or subscribe to A Clean Plate on YouTube if they want to find out when the next one is, or watch the Hangouts afterward on YouTube. And you can find the links for that in the description below. And you can also find links to these guys and their wonderful blogs, and you can find out what they're up to, which is always cool stuff. And I think that's about it. Does anybody have anything they want to plug, anything coming up, or?
I have one thing.
Go for it.
It's your ebook, the 28 Days on FODMAP AIP. I think it's an amazing resource, and people get a lot of use out of it. There's so many people in the autoimmune community are low FODMAP and are very confused about it, and there's a lot of confusing information out there, to be honest. But your book, 28 Days of Meal Plans, has a list, so check it out, people.
Thank you. That's really sweet. Yeah, that just came out last week, so it's brand new, and I haven't really told that many people about it yet. So thank you so much. I'm sorry that we have to say goodbye. Thank you guys for coming. Thank you guys for watching, and see you next time. Good night.
Night.
Christina, bye.